History knows them as the Glory Regiment for the heroic Civil War charge in which many of them laid down their lives for freedom.
We are on the march to Fort Wagner to storm it. We have just completed our successful retreat from James Island. We fought a desperate battle there Thursday morning.
Some of the men of the Massachusetts 54th wrote letters to loved ones and newspaper editors about the charge on Fort Wagner.
We met the foe on the parapet of Wagner with the bayonet. We were exposed to a murderous fire from the batteries of the fort.
Jets of flame darted forth from every corner and embrasure. Even Fort Sumter poured solid shot and shell on our heads.
I had my sword sheath blown away while on the parapet. Swept down like chaff, still our men went on and on.
These soldiers had a sense that they were in the midst of making history, that something momentous was happening here, and that they were a part of that.
The regiment's 26-year-old leader, Colonel Robert Gould Shaw, was putting his abolitionist beliefs on the line.
The color bearer of the state colors was killed on the parapet. Colonel Shaw seized the staff when the standard bearer fell, and in less than a minute after, the colonel fell himself.
Our total loss cannot be positively ascertained. It was placed about 300 killed, wounded, and missing.
July 18, 1863, the terrible and bloody day placed monumental proof before the entire nation. Black soldiers could, would, and did fight for their country.
Militarily, I think it was foolish. I don't think they could have won that. But the attack on Fort Wagner is far more important than the specifics of the particular military situation. It was the thing which made it known the willingness of African Americans to die if necessary for this cause.
But hundreds of men in the Massachusetts 54th did not die at Fort Wagner.
God has protected me through this, my first fiery, leaden trial, and I do give him the glory and render my praises unto his holy name.
For these black soldiers, another dangerous battle for freedom awaited, this time their own. To win it, they would have to raise their voices as bravely as they did their guns and call upon the mightiest weapon of all, the truth.
Although most of these men would never have considered themselves philosophers in the grand sense of that term, what we see here is reflected in their letters, people who saw themselves as the conscience of the nation.
The decimated Massachusetts 54th did not return from Fort Wagner to a hero's welcome in the summer of 1863. Instead, they confronted prejudice, heartbreak, and a humiliating dispute over pay.
Now it seems strange to me that we do not receive the same pay and rations as the white soldiers. Do we not fill the same ranks? Do we not cover the same space of ground? Do we not take up the same length of ground in a graveyard as others do? The ball does not miss the black man and strike the white, nor the white and strike the black.
By law, black Americans were not counted as citizens, so by law, black men in the Union Army would only receive pay as laborers, though they served as soldiers.
It was more than about money. It was about the kind of insult that you convey when you say to a person, we're asking you to give your life for half the money that we're paying somebody else to give his life for.
Now the plan is to inveigle the black man into the service by false pretenses, and then make him take half pay. If you don't take half pay and behave himself, as a vendor of religious tracts down here said.
Afternoon, the companies were all formed in line in their respective streets when Colonel Littlefield addressed each company to this effect. I have been requested by the paymaster to say that if the men are ready to receive $10 per month as part pay, he will come over and pay the men off. He then said, all who wish to take the $10 per month, raise your right hand. And I'm glad to say not one man in the whole regiment lifted a hand. Too many of our comrades' bones lie bleaching near the walls of Fort Wagner to subtract even 1 cent from our hard-earned pay.
Most of the soldiers that fought in this war came from the bottom of America's economic ladder. So for these people to refuse to...
Respectable families that have been torn to pieces and driven to beggary. It is hard to bear.
In September 1863, Corporal Henry Gooding took an extraordinary step, writing a letter to President Abraham Lincoln and voicing the indignation of many thousands of black Civil War soldiers.
Your Excellency will pardon the presumption of a humble individual like myself in addressing you, but the earnest solicitation of my comrades in arms is my excuse for placing before the executive head of the nation our common grievance. When the war trumpet sounded o'er the land, when men knew not the friend from the traitor, the black man laid his life in need to be again refused. And now he is in the war. And how has he conducted himself? Let their dusky forms rise up out of the mires of James Island and give the answer. Let the rich mold around Wagner's parapets be upturned, and there will be found an eloquent answer. Obedient and patient and solid as a wall are they. Now, Your Excellency, we have done a soldier's duty. Why can't we have a soldier's pay?
Corporal Gooding's letter went unanswered, but from another quarter came a shocking message. The regiment's brigade commander, Colonel James Montgomery, took a hard line on the pay dispute.
Colonel Montgomery had those in camp drawn up in line and addressed them as follows. You ought to be in Africa. Your features partake of a beastly character.
You think they didn't know that this guy is a racist? Of course they understood that he was. But here's the dilemma. He's also a commanding officer. So now what are your choices?
The regiment chose not to yield on pay. It was almost Christmas now, 1863.
3 times have we been mustered in for pay. Twice have we swallowed the insult offered us by the United States paymaster, contenting ourselves with a simple refusal to acknowledge ourselves, in this matter, different from other Massachusetts soldiers. Once, in the face of insult and intimidation, such as no body of men and soldiers were ever troops.
You have this one incident where Sergeant Walker brings his men in for patrol, tells them to stack their weapons because they're not going to perform service for which they are not paid, and not paid equally. He's court-martialed and he's executed for that.
1 year in the service of the United States has purged me of the major part of my patriotism.
Many of those men started to wonder whether they would ever have the support of their government. They were doing things for a nation that seemed to be determined to devalue them as human beings. The fact that they continued to act in the most patriotic way you could imagine is, I think, a tribute.
Half the time, causing the tearing and wearing out of more than the volunteers' yearly allowance of clothing, denied time to drill and perfect ourselves in soldierly quality, denied the privilege of burying our dead decently. All this we've borne patiently, waiting for justice.
In June 1864, as the tide of war was turning, the regiment's call for justice was finally answered in Washington, D.C.
The good news has reached here. Congress has reluctantly passed a bill equalizing the pay of United States troops.
Well, one of the things I think that the letter-writing campaign did was to keep the issue before...
Yet Fort Wagner now was victorious in their battle for respect from their government and their country.
We are men, and will do our duty while we are here without a murmur, as we have done always. Before and since that day, we were offered to sell our manhood for 10
claims about what it stood for, what it was based upon. And most of those claims revolved around this word freedom. And basically what these soldiers were trying to do in their letters is to say to whoever would listen, we believe in America, but we want America to believe in itself.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to help us produce more compelling historical content like this, please like, comment below, and share this video with fellow history buffs. And of course, be sure to subscribe to help keep history happening.